we have Anthony Orlando from Orlando Physical Therapy in New Jersey, and he's going to come on and talk about his opening story and how he started his practice in 2001 and recently opened his second location in New Jersey. So his main practice is in Hoboken, and he is really part of the community there. And I want him to share his story of how he has really integrated with the local business. There he is. Okay. Okay, just waiting for him to come on. So he's going to share his opening story, some of the things that he's experienced since in the last 23 years in business, and what it's been like hiring and opening a second location in a similar neighborhood. And Anthony, just click at a join video, ask to join video, and that should let you in. And I have a couple questions. Thank you for submitting questions yesterday. I'm excited to dive into some of the things like, the most difficult decisions you've made for your practice. I think that's really a good one to reflect on. Someone who's had 2 decades in the physical therapy industry. I'm just going to Right, and if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and I'll make sure to ask as we're going through. Click on the picture of the video camera at the bottom, right next to where it says comment, and there's like a little plus sign, and that should let you in. There we go. And we should be good now.
Hello.
Okay. Perfect. Welcome.
Thank you.
Are you in your Hoboken office?
No, I just got it home now. I'm in my home office.
Perfect. Well, I gave a very, very brief intro, so I think where we should get started is your opening story. I think it's a little bit different entrance into outpatient orthopedic private practice.
So my story when I began was 2001. It was right after 9/11. We opened up in November. That was my Hoboken office, and it was a tough time, obviously. And there really wasn't as much information. There was no social media, so there was a lot of trial and error. And but through that trial and error, you learned. You met good people along the way, and it forced you really to dig deep down and find your own way and carve your own path. So, so since that time, we grew until, what was it, 3 years ago, we opened up another practice in North Bergen. It's inside of a gym. So it took me that long to get my second practice, because along the way there was a lot of, I was raising a family. It was there was a lot of personal things I was trying to get through. I put myself through school, went back to get my DPT. So, but yeah, it's been a journey.
Go back. Were you working for an orthopedic practice when you opened yourself? Like, how did you make the transition from a staff therapist to going out on your own?
Well, when I got out of school, I was a pediatric physical therapist. I used to work for the Board of Ed. And so what I would do is you get home probably about 3:30, and then I would come to this practice. I had rented a room from a chiropractor in the back, and I was just seeing people, in the neighborhood. I was just collecting their copays, and I didn't even know about in-network. I had no idea about that. I was so new. So, but what I was trying to do was develop relationships, and I knew that if I was good at what I do, that they would go back and tell the doctor, and that's what really, I focused on. Can I develop relationship? It also gave me time to spend time. I knew by spending time with the patient, connecting, I realized that that connection really was helping my practice grow because they tell other people. Um,
So it's all word of mouth in the
it was
beginning.
all word of mouth. There was nothing like this. It had to be word of mouth. And the doctor would go back to the doctor, say, so, and then I would follow up on that. Call the doctor, hi, do you have some time? I wanted to stop by, introduce myself. I want to thank you. So that's really the way, I built up the business in the beginning. And then as we got busier, I stopped working which was always hard because when I was working for the school system, that was certainty. And that's what we all crave for,
Mhm.
right? As when we're young, especially when you're young, even when you get older, but you want certainty. I had that paycheck coming in. I had young kids. My wife was pregnant with our first and our second. I was still working at the Board of Ed. I have 3 kids. And so she wasn't working. So there was a lot of anxiety in the house. And anybody knows that owns their own business, it's a lonely world, when you're going through that, when you know what it is, you're so nervous when you start, is anybody going to come through the door, right? And then they come through the door and then you're like, well, how am I going to keep them, you know? And so it's like, so the anxiety will always be there. It's how you manage it, right? That's what I realized through this whole thing. I was like, I'm always going to have anxiety. And when I was packed, I was like, oh my God, do I have to expand? There was always a problem,
Yeah.
but you have to learn how to manage it, and that's who wins the game. Who wins the game is the person who knows how to manage that. And that's what I learned by actually through patience. I remember running around just like crazy, trying to make money, and I remember this old Italian guy like in Hoboken, and he's like, oh, you got to slow down. He's like, remember, you don't want to be the richest guy in the hospital. I was like, man, and that resonated with me. I was like, man, he's right. It's like, you have all this money, you can be in the hospital, you can make yourself sick. So that's when I started to really change the way I looked at things. As I
How
got
far in
older,
was that?
what's
Was
that?
that 3, 4 years in? Longer than that? When did you kind of make that shift
No,
from
it was
hustling?
longer. It was probably 10 years because again, by that time too, I was going to school probably in my 40s. So it was probably 10, I started by 30. Like about 40 years old, I started to really change. 40s,
Think about balancing the hustle.
yeah, I started chasing balance instead of money,
Hmm.
which changed my life. When you start chasing balance, the money falls into place. Um, so I started to look more at balance because I felt like this guy was right. Like, you listen to some old time, they have wisdom. You can Google all you want, but there's nothing like wisdom. And I was tapping into that wisdom. I was fortunate. I had I had a big Medicare population. And again, I spent that time connecting with people. And I realized too that my happiness wasn't making the money. My happiness was connecting. And that's what we're all happy. We want to connect with people. Whether you're connecting with me right now on Instagram, hearing about my
Right.
story, right? That's what makes you happy in life. It's your connection to people. So that's what I started to follow, and that's when I had an epiphany. I was like, you know what, as I'm doing this, what did I go to school for? What do I enjoy? And I started to work backwards a little bit. What do I enjoy? Well, I want to spend time with my family. And then I started writing my goals down. Well, this is what I want to do. And then when I looked at it, I was like, well, this is very attainable. When you take money out of the picture, things
Hmm.
become attainable. And that was it. That's what I worked, and then I started to build, and little at a time,
Hmm.
we
So
started building up.
we shifted more lifestyle focused versus numbers and revenue focused.
Yeah, I mean, you always obviously it's a business. You have to make money, but you just want to do things the right way. You don't want to get yourself sick. And you want to get paid properly also. And that's the other thing too about young therapists. Like realize your value. You have to realize your value. You're valuable. And if somebody's not coming to you, they don't think your service is valuable enough. You have to convince them, tell them who you are. That's where you have to be authentic. All right. You have to show who you are as a human being and you are as a professional. And when you show that value, people, you don't have to sell anything, they're buying, they're on board with you, right? You're developing this sense of trust. And from there, then you get raving fans. People want to come in, they want to see you. And I think if I had to tell like the younger gen,
Hmm.
that's the way to do it. Spend time, be authentic, be who you are. I mean, I very rarely meet bad physical therapists. Normally physical therapists at the heart, they're good people, they're good human beings. I think they get guilty, they have imposters, they have all this stuff that they go through because they are good. And I think the to navigate the landscape of the healthcare system, especially physical therapy, is a little bit tough because you don't learn these things in school. But you know what you have to understand is that we are unbelievable practitioners. We know a lot. We belong in this field, and people rely on us. And we see these people 2 to 3 times a week. You're the person that they're making the connection with. And I think physical therapists don't understand that because they're too busy worried about other things. You're getting these people when they're vulnerable. So you want to be able to help them get through this vulnerability. And not only are you going to help them, but you're going to help yourself too. You're not going to have imposter syndrome. You're not going to have any of that because
How
you're.
did you deal with some of the
Oh,
imposter syndrome in the
oh
beginning?
man, I went through that. Again, self-serve. How did I go through imposter syndrome? Um, I felt like what I was doing, well, hamstrings, anybody can stretch their hand. I didn't realize like you always play an important role. You never know who's coming through your door. And you know what, how I did realize is because I realized that I was taking my notes. So, I would take my notes and I wasn't really listening because I was so worried about getting my note done. I was like, okay, you sprained I was doing all that.
Yeah.
When I stopped to put my pen down or the computer, I started to talk just like this, like a human being. I was like, tell me about, what's going on? What are your goals? Right? I kind of took myself out of the equation and I
Hmm.
started thinking, I was like, wow, this person's coming from work. They're taking it and they can't wait to see me. This person's like, oh man, I've been all day. My back's been killing. Like, I was like, wow, I'm valuable. Like, I might be the only person all day they're going to speak to. So I
Hmm.
started to really look at the big picture and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put my pen down and listen. When I became a better listener and I started to connect, the imposter syndrome started going down. I started to just input my human side to me. And then you put your human, combine that with your practitioner side, and you're a powerhouse. You're a powerhouse. So that's
So
really how I did it.
I know this because I'm obsessed with reviews and I read all of yours.
Hmm.
And we started working together in 2021.
Yep.
And I looked at your form. You had 140 reviews in 2021.
Hmm.
You have 350 now,
Hmm.
just on the one location.
Hmm.
So probably 400 plus combined if we look at all of your
And all of them.
platforms.
Yeah.
And the common themes are always listens, understands, takes the
Hmm.
time, right? And so that's what people are mirroring. That's what people get from you.
Right.
There's none of this typing while I'm looking at you on the table.
Right. Right. Yeah, you're right. Most of them, and then you'll realize that's what people really want deep down.
Yeah.
People want you to listen.
Some
And I take pride in that, and it's really something that comes easy because you learn that really in your house. It's just like if that was your mother or your sister, your brother, they're how would you would listen,
I
and
hope.
so. But listening takes energy,
Yes.
and you're listening to a lot of stories, and you're listening it through the week, and you're a human being yourself. So, and my whole
This is
ritual.
this is exactly where I'm going. So one of the reasons that I asked you to book this is because when we were at private practice conference together and we were talking at dinner, you brought up your morning routine and it's nice to share it with me or with 5 people at the table, but I think that your perspective on how you set your day and why you set your day like that is really valuable for healthcare practitioners, not just PTs that are opening their own business, but there's a big problem with burnout in the medical field right now.
Absolutely.
And I think hearing your morning routine is going to be really helpful for a lot of people.
You're right. Burnout is a big thing, and it was happening to me too. So, My thing, it's all about energy. Okay, what I realized was we're helping all day, whether you're listening, working on people. There's an energy, there's a deficit in energy transfer. You're working on somebody's list, but nobody's doing it to you. So you need to love yourself. You need to take care of yourself. Why? Because you want to be the best version of yourself. You don't, not only as a practitioner, but as a spouse, as a father, as a wife, as a mother, right? As a brother, as a sister. You want to be your best version. So what I started to do was I was like, you know what? I have to get up. You know, Robin Sharman, the 5 a.m.
Hmm.
Club. I started reading his book a little bit. I can't get up at 5 a.m. That's all. So I became more of the 6 a.m. club, right?
Still fits.
So yeah, right. So I got to I started getting up and taking my time. And now, I'm Roman Catholic. I like to get up. I read the Bible every day. And I don't read the whole thing, but I'll read like a passage. It's usually something bothering me. It's amazing how everything in the Bible, hey, anxiety, boom, it'll come up. I have this app called the Bible Life Church, and I read that, right? That's the first thing. So right off the bat, I start to feel good, right? Then I feel grateful. I'm like, well, what am I grateful for today? I'm always, because if you're grateful, it's hard to be sad or depressed, right? You can't be in two states. So then I start to be grateful. I'm like, well, I'm grateful for this. And I think about hard things. I don't just say, hey, I'm grateful, for the same thing every day. I think about little things. Oh, I'm grateful that I can walk to work. I'm so great. There's people have to try, right? So I'll think of little things that I'm great. And I think about it, right? I usually do that. After that, my wife is probably getting up at around that time. And as practitioners, we serve. I was like, well, let me serve the person who I'm married to. Let me be the first. So I usually make her an espresso. We're Italian. So I'll have an espresso and then I'll bring her one. I'll say, hey, good morning. And then we usually talk, but I want to serve her for the day. So then we'll talk, and then we have a younger son. She starts to get him up. And as she gets him up, I usually make the bed because there's that book, Make
Hmm.
Your Bed, right?
Yep.
And make your bed is really not about making your bed, but it's about gaining momentum. You make your bed. It's the first task of the day. You get it done. So I like to do that. It puts me in a good. So at this point, it's probably like 7 o'clock, and I'm already in a good state. All right, right. I have a gym in my house, so I usually go work out, and I'll always do some cardio. I know at 23, 24 minutes, the serotonin levels are released. At 30 minutes, it's heart. I'm in my 50s, so I think about these things, what applies to me. Okay. After I'm done working out, I work out probably about 45 minutes to an hour. I'll always do some stretching, yoga, everything that we're going to do as PTs, I'm doing. Then my last 10 minutes, I usually meditate. Doesn't have to be hardcore meditation. Today, I just listen. I was listening to animate versus inanimate objects. Like, so if you heard a bird, I would say, oh, that's one animate. Then you heard like a car horn, that's inanimate. I would try to do it till it's three each. I play games.
I've never heard that style. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep
It's
you
it's almost like a form
present.
of mindfulness, right? So that's my biggest worry at that point. I was like, oh man, I hope a bird. But what it does, it starts to shift your mind, right? I
Yeah.
hope a car honks their horn, and I live in Hoboken, so, right? So I was like, oh, that's two, two,
Good
two,
chance.
right? So, but what it does, it really shifts your mind, okay? Then after that, I'm done, and I get up, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I feel so much better, and I feel, more importantly, I'm a very good version of myself right now. I'm like, when I go to work today, they're getting the best version of me. And I can't wait to go to work. I come upstairs, I shower, I have a steam shower, okay? And when I steam, that's it. I always think about, I'll meditate a little bit in the steam shower. I'll think about negative things going down the drain. And I'm like, I'm ready to start my day. And that's it. I head out the door. I usually have a light breakfast. But when I walk through my door, I am ready. I'm ready. It doesn't matter what happened. I could have the worst night. I could have big bills coming in. I could have, being not feeling well. My wife had health issues, so
Mhm.
like you're always going to have something, but you always have to know that you have to be the best version. They're coming to see you. And I take my job very serious. And that's how I kind of, getting back to those reviews, that's
Yeah.
how you build it up. I take that serious and I do it every day, but I know to do that I have to take care of myself. I need to take care of myself. So,
I think one of the things that stood out to me the most was the idea of serving the people you love before you serve your patients for the
Yep.
day. Because I think the way that you phrased it when we were having dinner was, we give all of our energy throughout the day to our patients, right? We want to be our best throughout the day, and then we come home and we're drained, and the people that we love and care about, the reason we're working so hard, are getting this drained, exhausted,
Right.
maybe a little snappy, irritable version of us.
You're perfectly
And
right.
just the way that you set it up like that. So yes, you do it to be the best version for your customers, but it's also that you're remembering why you're doing this in the first place.
That's right. Bingo. You got it. That's right. I mean, that's what we're doing. This is your family. These are the people who love you the most. You don't want to be your worst version, because
Mhm.
those are the people you're going to snap at too, lash at, because you're
Yeah.
so comfortable with them. So you're going to say that and they don't deserve that. I have children. Like, I want to be, you know, when we're laying on our deathbed, I'm not going to say, hey, I just wish I saw 10 more patients this way, right? You're going to say, I
Right.
wish I spent more time. I wish I could have spent more time with the little guy, or my husband. I could, or my wife. We could have tried, right? You're not going to say, "Oh man, I wish I had 50 more patients." And you know, so you
Yeah.
always have to think. That's what I was talking about earlier. Work backwards. Like,
Hmm.
what's the end game? And so that's, but that comes with wisdom. That comes with time. I wasn't doing that when I was in my third, because I think in your 30s, you're nervous. You're just starting your life. You're trying to save money. Maybe you bought a house. You have a mortgage. Maybe you want to start a family. So you're so
Yeah.
preoccupied, and normally people people or haven't died yet. In my age, you start hearing guys you went to high school. Oh, this guy had a heart attack. You're like, holy shit, he had a heart attack. So you lose a parent, maybe two parents. So you start to look at life at a different lens, a different prism. And when you start looking at that, that's when you really start to make changes, and you live with this state of gratitude. At least for
Yeah.
me.
Absolutely. And I think I didn't really set you up with these expectations at the beginning of the call like I should have, but the 700 PTs that are following and listening and are going to hear this interview, the common theme is people who want to grow their practice for the lifestyle.
Hmm.
So they're trying to get out of these clinic jobs where they're seeing
Hmm.
really high volume and they're exhausted and feeling this level of, I don't know if I could sustain this. And they want to go and work for themselves and be able to pay their own salary, do the things that they want to do with their family. So I have one person who said they want to take a Disney cruise with their kids before they get too old to be around their parents, right?
Hmm.
Too cool in their teenage, right? People who are preparing for a paternity leave, maternity leave, right? How do I balance that and come back to work and not have to be at the clinic until 8 p.m. every night? So I think you're talking to the people who want this lifestyle.
And yes, what I would add, and I think you're a great resource. Reach out. Don't be afraid to pay for things. Invest in yourself. Invest in your health. Invest in help. Invest in systems. You know how I love your systems and all.
Mm-hmm.
Invest in that. Don't be afraid. Say, "Oh, I'm going to save money." I kind of did that in the beginning too. I was like, "Oh, I want to save this. I want to invest in yourself." That's investing in peace of mind. Don't say, "Yo, I want to save," because you want to have peace of mind, and there's people that will help you. And the more people you reach out to, the more people you learn, the less alone you feel. And you'll start to
Mm-hmm.
learn that there are avenues that you can do this.
Yeah.
Because if you're left to your own mind, you'll convince yourself. Fear is stronger
Yeah.
than being inspired, right? Fear is the number one thing that gets people, right? You could scare
Right, and
yourself.
it's hard when you're working alone. So whether you have peers or you can find a mentor or you have a community, right, like what we've created here, it doesn't always have to be a paid version. It can be just finding someone who's one step ahead and maybe you can bounce ideas off of.
Correct. Modeling somebody, somebody
Hmm.
you admire. I mean, I would do that too. I would model people, or I'd read. I would say, wow, I kind of admire the way they do that. And I would learn
Yeah, I
about
mean,
that.
you are the ultimate in quoting books. I think I walked away with 3 new books to read just from our
Okay, yeah.
passing quotes.
I love books. I love to read. I love I love to be inspired. I love to be enlightened. I always did. So
Who
and
moved
you're
my
always
cheese?
learning. Who moved my cheese? That was my
Yeah.
1990. So I'm a little bit older. So who moved my cheese is about adapting, and that's something I had
Hmm.
trouble with. Right? This
Hmm.
wasn't when I came into the physical therapy world. This wasn't. We didn't do this, right?
Right.
Um, but I knew my cheese was being moved. And if
Yeah.
you're going to survive, I got to go find the cheese. I could be stubborn, right? Like him and Haw, that's who the book is about, and say, hey, I'm not going to move. But if you don't move, then, the only thing constant is change. You have to
Right.
be able to deal with change. Okay. So as uncomfortable as I am, I was never the social media type, even getting the reviews when we
Right.
started. I wasn't used to going, hi, could or giving, asking.
A
You didn't do that.
little uncomfortable at first.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like you didn't do this. Was so not who I was. But you have to evolve, and the flip side of being uncomfortable is having this freedom, like wow, like growth. When
Hmm.
you could get through some uncomfortableness, you feel fantastic. Get to the other side of that, you're like, wow, I'm growing. This is I would be so nervous to do this. Now I feel so much better. And then you help somebody else. So
Right. I call that the cycles of learning. Right? If you feel comfortable, we're stagnant, right? And trying something new for the first time, you're learning, and then you get really comfortable, and then we've got to go through that cycle again.
momentum, yeah.
Um, I noticed Pan joined. Pan is in New Jersey also. He asked yesterday, what is, let me just, I have his question. He said,
Pond, how you doing, Pond?
what are some of the most difficult decisions you've made for your practice?
the for my practice, or for me, for the practice is opening up another locate. That was tough
Okay.
because again, right, you're getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and it's a little different model too, because you're
A
in a
little
gym
bit
over there.
from mine and higher. And I'm gonna I'm gonna backtrack that, but and this is how when I found you, Steph, was great. And I go through this all the time. Hiring, I had a
Hmm.
problem hiring because I didn't know when to hire. I didn't have a model. I didn't have a system. And
Right.
I always talk about your system because when you have a system, when you have a model, it takes away all that anxiety. So you know when to hire. Hey, we're going to start here, right? And then now
Hmm.
it's easy to start growing, right? And then once you do that and you start freeing yourself up, your life changes. Again, you're still going to have, you will always have anxiety. You will always have fear. It's how you manage it that will set you aside. So you have to work on that. You're always going to have it. You're going to have it when you have no money. You're going to have it when you have a lot of money. You're going to have it when you have no patience. You're going to have it when you have a lot of patience. It's your mind that's going to be the difference. So
Hmm.
but when you have a system and you have a model and you have something to go back on, that always gives you some certainty. Okay, that gives you some certainty, and that makes you feel a little bit better about your
So
decisions.
the hard decision about hiring wasn't how to find the right person. It was knowing when the timing for the business was right, when you could afford it, if you were going to be able to fill that person's caseload. Like what was the challenging decision
all,
for hiring?
all of the above. You're right. All of that. So mine was like I wanted more free time. I was like, I wanted to be able to have some free time, right? Um, but then I was like, well, I can't afford it. I was making money and I had 3 kids and they were going through college and I have a mortgage and I had all these
Hmm.
expenses that everybody else does, right?
Yeah.
So again, right, you get attached to money because I'm like, well, I'm paying my bills. I got to do that. And then that anxiety of like, oh my God, am I busy? Am I this? And all that anxiety, you're not sleeping at night. And and so I was like, well, I need help. And that's when I started to, you have to
Yeah.
seek out help. And I was like, well,
2021 was a little bit of that anxiety
yeah.
point
And
for
I
you.
was
I
like, well,
think
how
you
do
had a
you
lot
do
of
it?
change in the business
And then
going
when
on too.
and I started working,
Yeah.
oh, well, this is how I do it. I was like, wow, I didn't know that. Um, and so that's, those were the things that helped me. I mean, for me, that's what I like. I like models. I do everything on a
Hmm.
system and a model. It just,
We
I
have our
feel like,
checkpoints,
yeah,
right? This is where we need to be at each stage, and we know if it's going right or what we need to adjust.
yeah. It's like a math equation, right? I always like math because you can
Yeah.
check it. You can check it. You can say, you can work
Yes.
back. You say, you know what? You plug in the X. Okay, the answer. So I used to like that because I like to check myself.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you don't know. You're kind of just going off on this thing, and that's when the anxiety comes in. You're like, oh my God. You don't want to wake up, or one day and you're practicing like you're going over the waterfall. You want
Hmm.
to be back here upstream, right? When you're upstream, that's where you take care of business. So when you go to the wall, you know how to navigate. You don't go over the cliff. Okay,
Hmm.
all your decisions have to be upstream. And that's the
Yep.
way you got to start thinking about a business. Okay, I need to make these decisions now. And you got to spend money, okay? And you got to invest in yourself. Okay, don't be foolish, right? You got to track, you got to monitor, okay? You got to do what's called Pearson's law. Whatever you monitor
Hmm.
grows, right?
Yep.
And it grows exponentially too. So you want to put that, and if you don't know how to do it, you hire somebody that knows how to do it. And
And I think investing in
the
yourself
who,
this
not the
year.
how, Stephanie. That's
Yes.
another one. All
I
right, the
know.
who, not the
That
how.
was that was the first thing you told me on our first
Dan
call. The who, not the
Sullivan,
how. And
the
I
who.
don't know. I
You're
didn't
my
know the book
who.
at the time. I do
You're
now.
you're my who. Yeah, it's like I get the who,
Well,
not the how.
yeah, the other thing is, I think is important to bring to light. You keep talking about investing in yourself. You came to PPS conference this year, so you were surrounded by other practice owners. There's 1,500 practice owners there. So that's a professional way of investing in yourself. Obviously, business coaching and being part of this, that's a professional way. You also go to personal development conferences
Mhm.
because that is just as important as the professional part. And I think as PTs, we always want more CEUs, more like book smart
Mhm.
knowledge. And I don't know that everyone thinks about the personal development as that investment piece too.
Yes, you need both. You need both. You have to invest in your personal. Um, I went to a Tony Robbins, and I highly recommend it. Unleash the Power. I did that. Um, what happens is when you start going these things, you start to rub elbows with like-minded individuals, and you learn. And again, you connect, and you feel part of it. It's the same thing with the PPS, and you start to learn these things, and you realize you're not alone, and you grow. And again, it all comes back to that. That's when you feel happy about yourself. You know what? This is why I went to school. You forgot that you enjoy learning, you enjoy
Yeah.
connecting. You forgot all that because
Right.
you've been so filled with anxiety. I got to make money. I got to pay the bills. I got to do right. You
Right.
forgot why you did all of this, right? That's like reconnect with you. And then worse is then you start feeling inadequate, deficient, right? Am I good enough? Am I this? Am I that? Then you feel like you're not good enough in anything, right?
Right. Because
And
you're
that
operating in a
you're
vacuum and your
operating.
negative thoughts are the only things you're hearing. So,
Right, right, and we love to beat ourselves up, right? We'll help anybody else, right? But especially
mhm.
PTs love to beat themselves up. Love it, right? Oh my God, I should have did this, right? Type A, we have to do that,
Yeah.
but you have to learn that there's a thing by Voltaire too, like don't let the perfect or the best be the enemy of good. Voltaire said that, and I always think of that. Even just do a little good every day. That's why when I said about meditate. I don't do it I do it for 5, 10 because that's good
Mhm.
enough. All right.
Right. It's
Always
the
do.
habit.
It's the habit. It's the consistency. You
Mhm.
want to gain momentum in life, whatever it is. You want to change your state. Every day I'm trying to change my state by doing what I told you earlier. It puts me in a better state, right?
Mhm.
It puts the odds in my favor to being a better person every day. Now I might have a crappy day. Yeah, I'm a human being, but at least I put the odds in my favor and I influence myself. You can't control. You can only influence, by the way. Can't
Mhm.
control, right? But you can
Right.
influence. Okay, because we're control
Absolutely.
freaks, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're all control, right? But you can't. But you can influence. Okay.
Mhm.
So what you do is you do as many things you could to influence something that will be a positive outcome for you, and that's basically what I do, and
Mhm.
that's what I try to live by, and I try to do it every day.
Um, I think that answers the question of the most difficult decisions, right? And how you make your
Mhm.
decisions. Um, from Jesse, biggest piece of advice to a new practice owner and your biggest regret currently as a business
Oh,
owner.
that's a good one. So
I
biggest
know, I
the
liked that
regret.
contrast, right?
My biggest regret is I know my biggest regret. It just hit me because I still share space. You know, I share space with a
Yeah.
chiropractor. That is probably my biggest regret. I didn't have the nerve enough to go out on my own and get my own place, and I regret it now. Now I regret it.
Okay.
Back then, I was like, well, you know, again, saving money,
Yeah.
right? The rent was cheap. I was going for the certainty, right? You know, but in retrospect, right, if I had to
Mhm.
do it over, I would have got my own plate because now it hurts me right now. Let's say I want to sell this. Let's say I got some private equity wants to come in and buy. Say, wow, you know,
Yeah.
Dr. Anthony Lane, he's got all this and that. Now I have a problem because I share space, right? They're like, well, what about this guy? So that's a problem for me, right? So my exit strategy has a speed bump, right? I just can't, you know, pick up and say I'm going to have to think about it. So I kind of regret that now. So I would
Yeah.
say get your own space, be your own boss, because you can always supplement that. My thing was, how am I going to pay for it? It's easy. I'll tell you how. You hire people, you become the boss.
Right.
Keep all the money in house, right? You want to get a massage therapist, you want to keep the money in your own house, right? So I would do that. It's my biggest regret. Okay. Anybody
You know
listening,
what?
get your own space.
That one is so relevant because I get the question all the time of, should I start mobile? Should I sublease? Should I get my own lease? And it's okay to do the stepping stones, but it's a matter of how long have we exhausted this option and when is it okay to go to the next level? And
That's right.
I talk to people who have the savings, who have the caseload, who have the reputation where they could afford their own space, but they're still a little bit like, oh, well, the month to month is very safe.
Yeah, right. And that's what we get caught up in. And when you
Yeah.
can get, again, I'll tell you what, whether you play it safe or you don't, it's still going to work out for you. So it's your choice. It
Yes.
always works out in the end. Okay, you can play it safe or you. So my thing is go for the happiness, live your authentic who you are. If that's what you want to be, dream. And I tell my kids this too. It's like this is what we're here for. It's going to work out. You're gonna, you know what it is when you're in a fearful mode, you're not taking into consideration how you're going to react to that. You just have all these things. Oh my God, they're going to close my place. I'm not going to be fun. No, you're going to
Yeah.
react. You're a smart person. It's not an accident that you are where you are, right? There's a reason
Right.
why you are where you are. It wasn't an accident. So believe in yourself, right? And do things every day that helps you build up that belief in yourself. And then when you do that, it will be easy. Again, you'll always have anxiety.
Totally.
It's how you manage it.
Yes.
You can have a tremendous place. You're going to be worried about, oh my God, am I going to be able to keep the doors open? It's like you're always going to have anxiety. It's managing it, and that's where we grow as human beings when we're comfortable with uncertainty. You have to be comfortable with uncertainty. The more
Yes.
comfortable you are, the more you'll grow. The
Yeah.
more you grow, the more excited about life is. Embrace vulnerability. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. So that would be my biggest regret. My biggest, what was the other one?